Welcome to the Stuff That Growth is Made Of podcast series. Today, we have a very special guest, Charles Scott, who is one of the top rated and requested speakers at Vistage, where he has conducted over 500 workshops with CEOs, business owners, and he also has spoken at the World Bank, at Uber, and several other top institutions in North America. He's been written up in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, National Geographic. So we are very lucky to have him with us today. Charles is here to talk about his in-demand workshop called What Do You Want to Do When You Grow Up? Hello, Charles, and welcome.
Thank you, Margaret. Happy to be here.
I thought we would start with you sharing a little bit about your background and what brought you to this moment and highly requested speaker and subject matter specialist on this topic. It's an unusual topic to be a subject matter specialist on. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey to date.
Well, I think one reason it's unusual is I made it up. And one of the
It's working.
one of the jokes I say is I say, I'm an executive mentor. It's a title I gave myself. I'm making all this stuff up, but so are you. We're all making up our lives.
I love that. So true. You're just calling it out. So I
I'm
think
just
that's a
gonna own
beautiful
it.
thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will own it. And then you can join me on this journey of making it up together and see, we'll be fellow travelers. So I started conventionally. I worked for 14 years at Intel Corporation, the very successful Silicon Valley giant. I was there during the Andy Grove era. Really powerful culture. It was such a great place for me to work in the early part of my career, in the first half of my professional life, is what I would call it, because the culture was so powerful, and I internalized a lot of the kind of the Silicon Valley ethos and Intel's specific culture, and I used that in the workshops that I run. I ran a marketing team there. I did international business development. I was chief of staff to a VP who reported to the CEO. So I got to see the world from the CEO staff level of an 80,000 person company where everything is global in scale. Everything's billions of dollars. It's really interesting perspective and hard, very hard. And then the last 6 years of my career there, I was a venture capitalist. I was a director in Intel Capital. So Intel Corporation, this manufacturer of microprocessors, at the time had a venture capital group. And so I spent those 6 years traveling the world, meeting with entrepreneurs, business leaders, people who would take an idea that doesn't exist in this world and they bring it to life. They nurture it, they try to keep it alive. It's incredible. And so I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug. But what happened is when I turned 40 years old, I wrote out a list of life goals. And number one on that list was dream up adventures with my kids. And I decided to start taking kind of crazy, wonderful adventures with my children. And I took a 2 month leave of absence from my job and I cycled the length of Japan with my 8-year-old son on a trailer.
Wow.
It took us 67 days. I ended up writing a book about it. It was incredible. And I started to realize there's this other part of me that I wanted to nurture and cultivate. And so it's the adventurous father, that was one part, but also the adventurer in me. And so the conventional corporate guy just, it was wonderful. I learned a lot from it, but I kind of outgrew it. And that created a crisis for me because I had a great job and had bills to pay and it felt crazy to leave it, but I ended up leaving it. So after 14 years, I left Intel and I became a family adventurer. And I cycled over 7,000 miles with my children in different places around the world. So when my daughter was 4 and my son was 10, we cycled the circumference of Iceland over 46 days. It's incredible.
Wow.
My son was on a trailer cycle and my daughter was in a bike trailer, so like a 3-person bike thing. We retraced the Lewis and Clark Trail by bicycle. So at age 6, my daughter cycled over 3 mountain passes in the Rocky Mountains. But she was on a trailer cycle. So there's a wrong way to do this. Don't put a 6-year-old on her own bicycle and ask her to cycle over a mountain. That's stupid. So you as the parent, your job is to do this appropriately, but it was incredible. And what I was doing was living adventurously. And I wrote a second book about the Lewis and Clark ride. I have 2 children. I published 2 books. These are my legacy gifts. And I said to my kids, I don't know when I'm going to die, but I will. And after I die, whenever you miss your dad, I'll be waiting for you right there in the pages of these books.
Oh,
So
that makes me cry.
and that was the energy. So
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
energy I used to leave the corporate world and to try to create something new. And then I started giving talks. I had another kind of thing that happened. A good buddy of mine went blind. And one of the way he kind of fought his way through depression and despair from losing his eyesight in midlife was to become a marathoner. And he asked me to start guiding him in marathons, which I did. And then we went on to do a bunch of crazy endurance challenges, like running across the Grand Canyon and back nonstop. That got us in CBS TV News and Fox News and Outside Magazine. And we created a nonprofit. So he and I co-founded a nonprofit called Team C Possibilities and just started doing really intense endurance challenges around the world. And the guy's blind. And then we raised money and gave it away in scholarship form with a mentoring program to college students who are blind. So I had these two parallel tracks of family adventures with my kids that I was writing books and articles about, and this nonprofit that I co-founded with my buddy who went blind, doing really intense endurance challenges. And I would give talks about these experiences, and people kept coming up to me afterwards and asking me to be their life coach. I never
Mhm.
said I was a life coach. I'm not, I'm just a dude taking his kids on bike trips. But they would say, well, I think you could be helpful. And so what happened is my professional identity that I have now emerged organically from my decision to follow what gave me vitality, to take big risks and to bring it to life and to figure out how to pay the bills in the process. But I started with myself and what gave me vitality. And then others saw some value to them in that and kept asking me to basically give them money. They're to give me money. Like, can I pay you to be my life coach? I'm like, no, you can't because I'm not a life coach, but I'll talk with you. And then I started to see patterns of behavior. I saw the ambitious person's trap, where you trash your physical health and emotional health in pursuit of your professional goals. I don't like it.
Mhm.
It's everywhere. I saw the caretaker's trap, where you undermine your physical health and emotional health in meeting other people's needs. I don't like it. It's not necessary. It makes you a worse caretaker. And then I saw how I could be of service to others. And so I created this business model, gave myself the title executive mentor, created this workshop. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I guide people through the process of how do you find vitality, bring it to life while paying the bills. And it's hard and it's complicated and it's specific to you. There's not one simple formula, but there's a lot of ways to do it. And I love guiding people in that process. And it emerged organically out of the decisions I made in my life.
I love that. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And what an amazing story. It's such an interesting this topic is is near and dear to my heart. First of all, a lot of the CEOs and business leaders I coach, there's several of them that are in a fork in the road, and they are like, okay, is this really what I want to continue doing, or I'm looking for new opportunity, but I want it to be meaningful. What does that look like? How do I find it? And I would even say for myself, I had mandatory retirement. I was in a partnership. And at that point, it really was a feeling. And my kids kind of laughed because they were in college or just graduating, but we were all kind of going through the same thing is what
Yeah.
do I want to do when I grow up, and what are the possibilities and how do I discover that?
Yeah.
So it really does resonate. So, how does a leader uncover that calling or that passion, if you will?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I would actually change the verb if it's okay. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
uncover is really the verb that well, I use a different verb. I would say, how do you design or choose your passion or your calling? And the reason is, rather than discovering it in yourself, I think what happens is we learn experientially, and in the experiential learning will emerge some data points that you can use, but then with that data, you make very specific choices and then you design it. So here's my specific advice, since you asked the how question, like how to do it. First, take all the self-assessments that are out there. Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, DISC profile, predictive index. There's a million of them. Colby, play personality. Take all of them. My favorite is the Sparketype assessment by Jonathan Fields. Every executive I mentor has taken it because it's mandatory if you work with me. I'm like, I want you to take this. It takes about 10 minutes.
Sparketype.
Yeah, it's spelled
Okay,
SPARK, like the spark or flame. The letter E is in Edward, and then type, TYPE.
got it.
Just Google
Got it.
Sparketype assessment.
Yeah.
It's based on the book Sparked, SPARKED, Sparked by Jonathan Fields. And he just came up with this really interesting process of asking a series of questions that would reveal what gives you vitality. And has these 10 simple labels that you get. And so my primary Sparketype is advisor, and my secondary, he calls it shadow Sparketype, is nurturer. And you and I spoke earlier, and you asked me, like, am I doing this as a one-man show, or have I created some business around it with employees? And what I discovered is, as an advisor nurturer, what gives me vitality is interacting with people directly and going deep with them. It is not building an empire or building a company. I really don't like that stuff. So I like the deep human connection. And when I worked at Intel, everything was at scale, billions of dollars, 10,000 person business units. And it's fun. It feels like power, but it's not me. And so once I figured out, oh, I'm an advisor nurturer, then I developed a business model and a professional identity that allows me to advise and nurture. In other words, if you and I were just friends having a beer at a bar, I'd be saying, have you read Spark by Jonathan Fields? I just do that. This is just what I do. And but now I get paid for it and have a business model and a professional identity around it. So my first piece of advice is to figure yourself out by doing these self-assessments. But then it's much deeper than that. That just gives you some entry points and some simplistic labels that can be really helpful to clarify, why am I stagnating? Why am I suffering? Why am I struggling? Why does this not feel right? Or why am I so happy? And I'm like, yeah, because you're doing advisor stuff and you're an advisor. Exactly. Okay, then the next piece of advice I hate. I wish this weren't true, and I hate what I'm about to say. It is just true. There is a category of wisdom only available to you on the far side of your own suffering. You will only get this wisdom through your own suffering. You will only get it experientially. You will not get it by reading a book about it. You will not get it by watching a movie about it. You will not get it by hearing someone like me yap about it. You will only get it experientially, and you don't even get it for free. You can suffer and like go through a divorce, for example, or lose a loved one. I've lost two good friends in the last year, one to suicide and one to brain cancer. It's terrible. I'm still grieving this. So you can suffer death of friends or heartbreak or betrayal and blame everyone else. I work with a number of people who've gone through divorce, and it's very common to hear about them. It's amazing how many narcissists there are in the world. All the exes are narcissists. So if you blame the other people or the cruel, chaotic world for your suffering, you will not get this wisdom. You'll just be a sad sack loser. So your job, and this is why it's so unfair, is in the midst of the suffering, which is so exhausting, overwhelming, and cruel, you have to do extra work. And the extra work is to figure out, what am I going to learn from this? What am I going to take away from this? Same thing if you get fired. People always get upset and blame like how unfair it was. I'm like, listen, when you're finished complaining about how unfair it was you got fired, can we get onto the work of what you're going to do anyway, which is reinventing yourself? Sometimes the biggest gift someone can give you is to kick you out of your comfort zone, is to kick you out of the status quo, and then forces you to then create the life you want to create. And then 5 years from now, you write them a thank you letter and say, thanks for firing me. I would never have created this amazing business or this amazing new identity had you not fired me. And so that's important. But the point is, your job is to extract the wisdom from your own suffering. There's no avoiding suffering. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I found helpful is looking for role models. When I was at Intel, I mentioned I was there during the Andy Grove era. So Andy Grove was a professional role model for me, really amazing, intense, gravitas-filled person who showed me what it's like to just, fill up the room and to have super high expectations. You'd go into meetings super prepared for him because the bar was so high. He didn't suffer fools. He'd call you on your BS. If you said you were going to do something you didn't, oh my goodness, you would struggle. I mean, it was just amazing to watch him as a leader. And so I saw what it looked like to be an incredible business leader. And he was smart and asked good questions, et cetera. So Andy Grove was kind of my business role model. And then in my personal life, I had a bunch of role models. My parents were great ones. I got lucky. I was raised by wonderful parents. I could just kind of copy what they did, and it pretty much worked. But others, I even thought Lewis and Clark were interesting role models because they were adventurers. Meriwether Lewis was tasked by President Jefferson to go explore the unknown. And the second book I wrote was about exploring the unknown. So that's a metaphor for what we're all doing. We're explorers, figuring out what the journey is, what the path is. So the key is to go all in. Figure yourself out, extract wisdom from suffering, choose what it is you're going to do, and go all in. Where I see the trap people fall into is they're ambivalent. They're half in, half out. They're like, I really don't like this job, but it pays well, or mommy and daddy are proud of me because it looks good. So they let their ego drive it, or society tell them, or someone else tell them what to do. So they're half in, half out. That is a recipe for stagnation. So whatever you choose to do, go all in is kind of the secret. The other trap I've seen is people think they're supposed to know. That's why I said this is such a big question. I have a quote. It's right over my desk. Actually, I'll read it from Rainer Maria Rilke. Right? Here's what he says. Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek the answers that cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. In other words, be
Mm,
patient with yourself. And so when I'm working with someone in their late teens or early 20s, they think they're supposed to have an answer to your question you just asked. What's your passion? That is not knowable
hmm
at age 18. You can say these things I'm excited by. I have dreams. It's wonderful. But Rilke's right. You live into these answers perhaps someday. I don't know. So it's more like a process. And what I know is the process is do the hard work of figuring yourself out, extract wisdom from suffering, choose what you're going to do, including relationships, and go all in. And then don't expect yourself to know, right? You're just going to learn experientially, right? And so that was basically what I found in my own experience. And the last thing I'll say is that the more vitality you have, the more money you will make. As a venture capitalist, I saw this. The key is the people who know themselves so well, and they're just so confident in the wisdom of what gives me vitality. It is attractive. It attracts capital. It attracts great employees, right? It attracts investors. Of course, it attracts customers. And so vitality, if you want a one watchword in terms of like the secret to passion, it's look for what gives you vitality. And I have a whole model where I kind of help people kind of get to that.
I love that. Boy, first of all, there are so many things you talked to that we can spend, an hour on each of those topics or more. Um, so there's so much nuggets of wisdom there, and the quote is beautiful. It's an interesting thing, and something I know all of this resonated, but what really stands out is the learning, if you will, from suffering, right? So you need to get to the point saying, okay, what am I going to do about this? How do I take this and move forward, right? It's that forward looking
Yeah.
component of it is how I interpret that. So yeah, wow. It is interesting when you break it down. All those pieces make sense, but easier said than done, I would imagine,
Oh,
as you're
it's
working
everything
with
I said
people.
is, I'm sorry to talk over you. Everything I said
No,
is
okay.
everything I said is very difficult. So if
Yeah,
in case anyone is believes because I might have said something in a succinct way or clear way that it's easy, I never said that. I never said
yeah.
anything easy.
No,
This is
it's a process.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's a process, I think, of discovery. And as you said, also, one of the things I know when I coach, I was never one, I remember when my kids were younger, some were like, oh, yeah, I want to be a doctor. And they ended
Sure.
up being a doctor. Some did not, or they wanted to be a ballerina. My kids didn't have that perspective, if you will, or and I didn't either. But it's really about experiencing things and uncovering what, as you said, gives you vitality, what gets you excited, and what is like, oh gosh, whether I'm making a lot of money or not, this is not how I want to spend my life.
Yeah, you
So
notice
it's
that
that feeling.
I didn't say money. Oh, I did. I think I said the more vitality you have, the more money you'll make. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but the money is the manifestation, is the outgrowth of it. And I do think this is something you do throughout your whole life. This
yeah,
never, so it's not like you then retire from this. So the
yeah,
passion calling is I would equate that to vitality, which is life energy. And so until you take your last breath, you're really doing some version of this work. The context just changes. You might get to a point
yeah.
where you need to make money, but it's still the same work for all of us as human beings, I think.
Yeah, it's uncovering and exploring. It's the process of that, I would
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And then, I one of the things I would imagine, and I believe I know the answer, but I think it's worth naming it. People have busy lives, and some people would say, "Oh, I don't have time for this," or how do I integrate, you know, finding my, or uncovering my what gives me energy, the vitality at
Yep.
home versus work, and how do you bring that together, both personally and professionally? Well,
Yeah.
how would you respond to something like that?
Sure. And this is actually how I start the CEO workshops that I do is with the what do you want to be when you grow up exercise. So one place to start, there are many entry points to this, but one place to start is to reflect on your childhood. So think back to when you were a kid or a teenager, and adults would ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I do this exercise where I ask people to reflect on it and tell me what they said. And some people might say astronaut or doctor, right, or a professional sport, athlete or something. And then we analyze it. And so I just say, why? Why did you want to be a doctor? And the trap that I see some people fall into is they judge themselves by the what column. Like I wanted to be an astronaut. And I would say, why'd you want to be an astronaut? We'll have an interesting conversation about all the reasons they want to be an astronaut, right? They love exploration. They love science. They like getting credit for doing great things. Because the astronauts get a lot of accolades, right? They like being around super smart people. But then I say, oh, so great. Did you become an astronaut? Like, no, I'm just a seventh grade science teacher or just running this silly business or something. So they're almost disappointed that they didn't become the what. But the what is not the thing to focus on, it's the why. And so
Yeah.
so the key is to generalize yourself. So we look at the specific things you want it to be and then ask why, and then look for the generalization. So it sounds like you're a person who likes to be surrounded by people who inspire and challenge you, right? That's what astronaut means to me. Or you're someone who's fascinated by science and exploration. So that means you're a person who really is willing to do hard work to uncover truths and not just be satisfied with the first explanation that doesn't necessarily make sense, etc. So you go into the generalizations, and then you start looking at how do you use that data to create the professional identity that's aligned. So now we're back to my earlier answer, is you start with figuring yourself out and you go from there. The other
Yeah.
formula that I encourage people to do, like how to integrate this, is think about what excites and intimidates them. So this is the vitality formula. If something excites you, it's your authentic self in full expression. By definition, you're excited by it. And if it intimidates you, it's likely to push you beyond your perceived limits. And there's a space between perceived and actual limits where resilience is born. It's very uncomfortable. You'd never go there unless you're excited by it. That's why you combine excites and intimidates. But this is where we grow. And many people are afraid to go beyond perceived limits. And if you can push yourself, and we all have limits, of course, but you can get closer to that. This is why I love endurance athletics. You find out your actual limits. And in that space, there's a lot of knowledge. So if I were to simplify it to answer your question, proactively seek out meaningful discomfort. In your busy life, regularly make a habit of proactively seeking out meaningful discomfort. And this could be taking risks in your love relationship, being vulnerable and highlighting sources of resentment, for example, or asking for what you need, or asserting boundaries in the love relationship. At work, it could be pushing yourself to try to learn or do things that feel like a stretch where you have a little bit of imposter syndrome. But it's Clayton Christensen, the late Harvard Business School professor, he would call these just manageable challenges. So you want to go for just manageable challenges, not ridiculous things that set you up for failure, but push yourself just outside of your comfort zone. So seek out discomfort and then think small, like think incrementally. The idea is we're all creatures of growth and transformation on a journey. So how do you make an incremental step in your growth path? You can't do this if you don't know what your growth path is. So the other thing is to think about, and this is all these things are work that I do with executives where we help them develop clarity about what is your trajectory, what does success look like to you, how do you want to grow, what does thriving look like to you, and then wherever you are right now, what's an incremental step that you can do? So do things at kind of micro level. If you're sedentary, for example, a lot of executives I work with don't have time to get to the gym, and so they're like, no, I need to work out, but I really don't have time. And then I'll say, so, well, how many hours in a day could you allocate to exercise? And I've had a CEO said 0. He's like, you try to do my job and get to the gym. Like, it's 0. And I said, okay, great. If you have exactly 0 seconds a day when you can exercise, but you know you need to exercise, here's what you do. Look at your calendar. Any one-on-one that you have on your calendar, turn it into a walking one-on-one. If you don't have to be in front
Yeah.
of the screen, just go for a walk. You get free steps, right? So free exercise. Or another thing, and this is when I do workshops, I'll encourage people to do this. My workshops are 3 hours long. That's a long time to sit and sit and sit. I feel terrible for the people in the room who have to sit for 3 hours while I yap away up there. Even if it's a fun interaction, you're being forced to sit for 3 hours. So the key then is isometric muscle toning. So this is another thing you can do. If you want to focus on your health and you have precisely 0 seconds in the day to get to the gym, when you're in your boring meeting or when you're stuck in a sedentary situation, is tighten up your stomach muscles and hold them tight for 20 seconds and then release them and then do it again and then release them. Just do this for the whole meeting.
Great idea. Yeah.
It takes 0 seconds out of your busy day. You'll be sore the next day if you do this long enough. It tones muscles, it burns calories. So the key is to think creatively about the boundary conditions of your life. So, and that's what's just, I have 0 seconds to get to the gym, no problem. That's just a boundary condition. But then what is it I want to do? Well, I want to stay physically healthy. Got it. So then what do you do within those boundary conditions? And that's where you tap your creative mind to not just give up, but to come up with solutions. that work for you. And thinking small, thinking incrementally, thinking something that you can actually pull off is the secret. Even if it's the best idea, if you can't do it, it's not the best idea because you can't do it. So that the best idea is the one that actually works. The best idea is the one that you can actually day in and day out do. So the bar has to be really low in terms of how much energy you have to expend to create new habits. And James Clear, by the way, is really good on this, the book Atomic.
Love James Clear.
Yeah, he's great on this. And so he gives you all kinds of different little tips and tricks. And so that's something that I work with people on doing as well.
Yeah, love that. Well, again, I'm a take action kind of person. So I love that even if it's just a little, you find a solution, which then also hopefully motivates you to go to the next step, right? Hey, you found time to do this and it made you feel good. How do you keep that going?
Yeah.
So, well, good. Thank you. Actually, one of my questions was going to be what are some of the critical success factors to live a meaningful life? And I think you just did a phenomenal job outlining several of those. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So, I want to be cognizant of time, Charles. Is there any other topics we should cover that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, I would just say, if you were to summarize, let me summarize kind of the discussion we've had so far from my point of view.
Yeah.
So the key to thriving in life, in my opinion, is starting with your physical and emotional health. Many people seem to treat their physical and emotional health as nice to have afterthoughts. They'll get to if they can get to it. A lot of times they don't get to it. And that's backwards. So start with the premise that your physical health and emotional health are must-haves. And with that foundation of health, you can be much more successful professionally with this solid foundation. So start there. Then second, develop clarity about what your growth path is, right? So what does success look like to me? And I gave you some thoughts on how to do that. And that takes a bunch of work. But with that clarity, then you design a positive feedback loop. And the positive feedback loop is to create the environment that facilitates that success. That's why in EOS, they say right people, right seats. When you're in the wrong seat, you've got the wrong context to thrive. So help people find the right seat for themselves means we're going to align your professional identity with what you're good at, what you like, and you find meaningful. And then you're motivated, and that motivation is you all in and you succeed. So what you want to do is create these positive feedback loops on top of the solid foundation of physical and emotional health. What I've found, the topic I guess I would add is relationships. If you want one most important thing, it's healthy relationships. I would say this, and this is the outcome of the Harvard longitudinal study on adult development. It's a study that's been around since 1937. Dr. Robert Waldinger is running it right now. He wrote a really interesting book about this study, the summary findings. And the most important thing you can do to thrive in life and have a long, health span is to invest in and to nurture healthy relationships. This is in your personal life and in your professional life. A lot of people I work with are frustrated because they don't like their boss. And that's a huge problem, because I personally, if I'm going to work for someone, I want you to inspire me and challenge me. I want to respect you and look up to you. And so this is important. Pay attention to the relationships and what is business but relationships. I mean, business is relationships. And so the key is to become really smart about yourself and other people and how you relate in a healthy way and create this positive feedback loop. I had a CEO ask me, what do you think is the best college major for someone who wants to be a CEO? And I said, easy, human psychology, hands down. What do you think we're doing here? Right? What you're doing, you run a business. What do you think you're doing as a leader? It's investing in and it's nurturing healthy relationships, helping people to thrive and be motivated. This is all psychology, human psychology. And so understanding that. And then the other element I've found, many people I find who are really thriving, they find great meaning in being of service to others. And this was the epiphany that I had. The people who would come up to me after my talks and ask if I could help them were asking me to be of service to them. And when I figured out how I could do that and I created a model around it, it felt so deeply gratifying. We all want to be lovely resources for people. I think most human beings, we're not sociopaths. A tiny, tiny minority of people are, and the rest of us all want to be helpful and want to be needed. It feels great. So do the work to figure out how you can be of service to others. But the one last thing I'll say on that is watch out for the caretaker's trap. You don't do the martyr thing where you meet everyone else's needs at your expense. That's a trap. So being of service to others includes having really healthy boundaries about where it ends and where it's not okay to ask this of me. And so there's a kind of golden mean there, if we want to use Aristotle's language. There's a golden mean of being of service, but also taking great care of yourself. And then you're an amazing caretaker. You're an amazing leader. You will thrive in life. And it is the most satisfying thing you can do to be a wonderful resource for others.
Love that. Well, first of all, I hear your passion in your voice, Charles. And as you said, the vitality, you figured it out, which is something that I think we all want to do. But your energy is contagious, so I can hear your passion, and I can't wait for you to join us, my group next week, in talking about this topic. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm
You
excited.
know, yeah, when I think of relationships too, I know you talked about work, and I love the analogy. I am a scaling up Pinnacle guide, and so the
Yeah,
EOS model similar.
sure.
But I think that's just a great way to relate to it. If you may be really smart and really good, but if you're in the wrong seat doing the wrong job, you're not going to be able to thrive or be happy there. But
Right.
also, a lot of people are so focused on relationships at work, and you need to really balance that in terms of, they'll say I don't have time to, I even think of myself when I was really busy traveling. I was a young mom. I missed my friends. I wasn't connecting with them as often as I wanted to until I became more intentional in that. And it's really balancing all of that as well. So
You and I
again,
have a violent agreement.
yeah. So one last question, and I know you've mentioned it and have peppered it throughout the conversation we've had, though. Again, I know you do a lot of speaking. It sounds like you named yourself as, what was it, an executive mentor? I think was that the word?
That's the word.
Um,
Very, very impressive sounding title, isn't it?
it
Yeah.
is really impressive. Anything else that the listeners should know about you in terms of, if they wanted to talk to you and be part of your workshop, what would be the best way for them to connect with you?
Oh, no, thank you for asking that. Yes, so anyone who wants to work with me, we always start with a 1 hour diagnostic call. So if you go to my website, it's executivementorcharlesscott.com. There's a diagnostic form on there you can fill out. It's 12 questions, and it'll automatically be sent to me, and I'll just follow up. So what we do is we spend an hour going through your responses to these questions, and I'll give you feedback based on your responses, and I'll ask you to expand. I'll take notes and listen. So there's intrinsic value to answering the questions. There's intrinsic value to just having this conversation where you have an outsider kind of giving you feedback on maybe what issues matter to you. But it's also a vetting call. It's a chance for me to vet the person to make sure they're the right person to work with, for me to work with, and for them to vet me, make sure I'm a good resource. And so we spend an hour together. It's totally free, and I offer this because I think I like these conversations. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you want to work with me after that call, what I offer is every quarter, I offer the executive mentoring workshop. This is a virtual 8-session, weekly 8-week course where I'm helping people to figure out all the stuff we talked about. How do you thrive personally and professionally, and start conceptually, but turn it into a practice? So I'm helping people turn this into a practice. That's its own standalone course. But then after that, if you want to keep working with me, it shifts to an executive mastermind model. And I've worked with people for almost a decade in this model where we meet monthly in small groups by Zoom. So I work with people all over the world, and I'm
Love that.
them, and we challenge each other and hold each other accountable. So that's the process.
Love that. Well, first of all, this was very inspiring for me, and I think I may participate in your workshop. I think this is a topic near and dear for me. So, love learning all about it. Love speaking with you. So, just a real big thank you. Just wanted to start with that, and I can't wait to see you next week in our meeting.
I'm looking.
Um,
Thank you so much.
yeah, and to all the listeners, this is the stuff that growth is made of. Look forward to seeing you next month as well. Take care.